Joined now by Tisch Sussman, a Democratic strategist, and we've got Kevin Paul Scott, a Republican strategist. Emily, what do you make of that? Number one, the news today that there is perhaps quiet negotiating going on between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, plus they want the whole system of primaries changed, just as Donald Trump does on the Republican side. Will they get that?
Look, running against the system is something that has worked pretty well for Sanders, as it has worked for Trump. You set up that narrative that if the system is broken, the system is against you, then you're always winning that narrative, right? If you do well in it, it's a win. If you don't do well, it's the system. It's something that's worked fairly well for him. But the reality is that Clinton is just beating him in straight votes. Millions of straight votes. So I think that's a piece that's a little bit harder for Sanders and some of his supporters to take. But look, I mean, I think that's wonderful that his wife came on to talk about how he's continuing to campaign, and I'm glad they're speaking to new audiences, you know, coming on this network. But he is laying off campaign staffers. That is real.
Well, what about that,
Kevin? In a lot of money, he spends a lot of money.
Kevin, when you start to see a campaign do that, the next step possibly is if they do drop out, they want a conversation. They want to be part of the conversation. Can Bernie Sanders perhaps affect Hillary Clinton's path in some way, shape, or form, whether it's from a policy standpoint or something else?
Yeah, unfortunately for Bernie Sanders, he fought a good fight. The fight is ending. Hillary is going to be the nominee. And at this point, he's trying to pull the party to the left. The time to do that is a primary. I don't think he's going to have a lot of success, because at the time he's pulling them to the left, Hillary Clinton is trying to look like a serious contender. She is trying to look like the adult in the room with Donald Trump. And even though she's super corrupt, she's got to look like, I'm not so far left as Bernie Sanders right now. It's not going to work for Bernie.
Well, look, corrupt, you know, that's certainly the opinion, and that's the narrative that the Republican side wants to put in. But, Emily, I got to get to Ted Cruz and all that's going on there. He tried very hard. I think it took him 39 minutes to say the name Carly Fiorina is my vice presidential candidate, or she's going to be my running mate here. But in about 2 seconds, John Boehner eclipsed all of that by giving a speech at Stanford calling him an SOB.
Oh, he really did. Look, the one thing that Cruz was successful in doing was getting into the conversation in a positive way. After Tuesday night, he actually, I mean, he basically is virtually eliminated. Not technically, but virtually eliminated. He tried with a PAC with Kasich that has totally fallen apart. So the thing he did do successfully was getting people talking about him as a candidate again by announcing Fiorina. It's not really clear where that base of support would take him, like how that would actually help him. Yeah. And then Boehner coming in last night talking about how terrible he was to work with in Congress. Look, I work in Washington. I've seen this in the Senate. I've worked on nominations that Cruz has opposed. And what happened in the Senate is that he would go into Senate meetings and they would talk about strategy, and he would totally stay silent. And then he would walk right out of that meeting and go right to the press and talk about how he was leading on opposition. So the reason his colleagues don't like him is not because it's ideological or he's an outsider. It's because he's a jerk.
Well, to that point, Kevin, Donald Trump is trying to paint Ted Cruz in the same way. What does Donald Trump do now? It's very interesting. You heard Jeff Flock, or maybe you didn't. He said that in this most recent speech in Evansville, Indiana, Donald Trump didn't even talk about Ted Cruz in that regard. Is that a smart move? Is that the new Donald Trump?
Well, of course, because Donald Trump is the presumptive nominee at this point. He's beginning to pivot his focus. It's the right thing to do, because at this point, Cruz did. Emily's right. He took the headlines for just a little bit, and unfortunately for him, Donald Trump didn't have to take it back. John Boehner did it for him. Trump has all the momentum going to this nomination. Cruz is really in trouble at this point. And, you know, even if Donald Trump doesn't get 1237, with all the momentum, it's hard to see a way he doesn't claim this nomination. Ted Cruz had a really pathetic performance this week, and it's hurting him.
Okay, listen, great to see both of you. Tisch Sussman, Kevin Paul Scott, such a pleasure to have both of you. Thank you so much.